Good afternoon, everyone. Pediatric Center of Excellence at Medical College and Hospital, Kolkata welcomes all the participants for today's RDLS session. Today's topic is immunization among CLHIV, and the speaker is Dr. Paulomi Mukherjee. Dr. Paulomi Mukherjee, ma'am, is an assistant professor with the Department of Community Medicine at Medical College and Hospital, Kolkata. She holds an MBBS and an MD in community medicine, along with a diploma in community mental health from NIMHANS, and is a member of the Indian Public Health Association. Her academic training and professional experience reflect a strong commitment to public health, medical education, and community mental health. We welcome you, ma'am, for today's session and request you to start the session.
Thank you. A very warm good afternoon to all the participants. I'm starting my topic. The topic of today's presentation is immunizations among children living with HIV. Now, the learning objectives of today's program is basics of immunology, types of vaccines, impact of vaccines on disease epidemiology, efficacy and safety of vaccines in children living with HIV/AIDS, adverse event following immunization, vaccine schedules for children living with HIV. It is a proven tool for the control and eradication immunization. What is the definition of immunization? It is a proven tool for the control and eradication of infective disease and the most cost-effective measure to reduce childhood morbidity and mortality. Indian Academy of Pediatrics has established guidelines for vaccinating children with HIV infection. CDC, that is the Center for Disease Control, Advisory Committee on Immunization Practice, that is ACIP, and World Health Organization, that is WHO, recommended immunization guidelines for HIV-infected children. Now, we know that immunization is a proven tool for the control and eradication of infective disease and the most cost-effective measure to reduce childhood morbidity and mortality. Now, what is the difference between control and eradication? Control is reducing the disease incidence to a locally acceptable level by intervention measures so that it ceases to be a public health problem. Whereas eradication means extermination of the infectious agent so that there is zero incidence of the disease and there is no need for any longer any intervention. Now, the key milestones in Universal Immunization Program in India. We know that the Universal Immunization Program was launched in 1985 and it was rolled out in the country in 1990. UIP became part of the RCH program, that is the Reproductive Child Health Program of India, in 1997. National Technical Advisory Group on Immunization was formed in 2001. A new vaccine in hepatitis B became part of the UIP in 2002. International review of UIP was conducted in 2004. UIP became part of the NRHM first multi-year strategic plan released, and AFI surveillance. What is AFI? Adverse event following immunization. AFI surveillance and response guidelines released. Auto-disable syringes were launched for vaccination in 2005. In 2004, National Cold Chain Assessment was conducted. In 2009, guidelines for involvement of private practitioners in UIP was released. In 2010, India introduces measles vaccine second dose in UIP. Japanese encephalitis became part of the universal immunization program in selected state. In 2011, hepatitis Haemophilus influenzae B vaccine and pentavalent vaccine was launched. Last while poliovirus case reported, national vaccine policy released, open file policy implemented for the first time. What is open file policy? It is a policy for multi-dose file to be used for an extended period of 28 weeks provided certain conditions are fulfilled. Then second multi-year strategic plan ready. WHO removes India from the list of polio endemic countries in 2012. In 2050, IPV, that is inactivated polio vaccine, was launched in India. In 2016, India became first Asian country to introduce rotavirus vaccine. In 2017, measles, rubella, and pneumococcal conjugate vaccine launched in India. Intensive Mission Indradhanush program was also launched in India in 2017. Now, Mission Indradhanush was launched in 2014 as a special drive to vaccinate all unvaccinated and partially vaccinated children and pregnant women by 2020. Revised National Immunization Schedule was launched in July 2024 by Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Government of India. Now, what is the importance of immunization among children living with HIV/AIDS? HIV infected children are more susceptible to diseases in comparison to immunocompetent children. That means that HIV infected children suffers from disease more in comparison to immunocompetent children. HIV disease progresses very rapidly in young children, often leading to death. So in children who becomes HIV symptomatic, the disease progresses in them very rapidly and that often lead to death. There is an increased need for vaccination against all vaccine preventable disease. We know that there are certain vaccine preventable disease and we routinely vaccinate the children against those vaccine preventable disease to prevent death or mortality morbidity from infectious diseases like pneumonia, polio, diphtheria, tetanus, etc. It is important to ensure that they receive all recommended immunization. The counselor should review immunization records to identify any missed immunization and arrange to redress as soon as possible. So the counselor should review the immunization record. बच्चों का जो इम्यूनाइजेशन रिकॉर्ड है उसे जांचना है और देखना है कि बच्चा कौन सा इम्यूनाइजेशन डोज मिस कर चुका है और उसे तुरंत बच्चे को देना है. Immunity. Immunity is of two types, innate immunity and adaptive immunity. What is innate immunity? Innate immunity comprises the skin, mucosal barrier, and phagocytes, that is neutrophil, monocytes, macrophages, and natural killer cells. Adaptive immunity is provided by the lymphocyte, that is the T lymphocyte and the B lymphocyte. The innate immune system triggers the development of adaptive immunity by presenting antigen to B and T lymphocyte. So we all know that there is an innate immunity in our body, and when antigen enters in the body, a foreign body enters the body, the innate immunity triggers the development of adaptive immunity by presenting the antigen to the T and B lymphocyte. Vaccines that stimulate innate immunity are better immunogen. Now, active versus passive immunity. What is active immunity and what is passive immunity? Active immunity is acquired in three ways. Number one, by natural infection, clinical infection like with chickenpox, measles. With subclinical infection like in diphtheria, polio. And when immunization is done by vaccination with a live attenuated vaccine or a kill vaccine or a toxoid. So what is active immunity? Exposure to a pathogen triggers antibody production. It can be natural through clinical or subclinical infection. It can be artificial through vaccination. Active immunity, resistance developed in response to stimulus by an antigen, infective agent or vaccine, and is characterized by the production of antibodies by the host. Passive immunity is when a person is given antibody rather than producing them. So in passive immunity, the immunity is acquired passively. What we do here, it is also acquired in three ways. Number one, when an antibody containing preparation is given to the patient. Number two, when transfer of maternal antibody to the fetus through placenta. Sometimes the breast milk also contains antibody like the IgA antibody is present in the breast milk that is transformed from the mother to the baby. Number three, when lymphocyte containing preparation is transferred to the baby. A person is giving antibody rather than producing them. Natural maternal antibody, artificial monoclonal antibody. Passive immunity is immunity conferred by an antibody produced by another host. It may be acquired naturally or artificially through an antibody containing preparation. So we just discussed that passive immunity occurs naturally when the mother's maternal antibody transfers through the placenta to the baby, and artificially when a lymphocyte containing preparation or antibody containing preparation is injected into the child. Now, active versus passive immunity. Specific defenses immunity. Active immunity, we say that there can be a clinical infection, a subclinical infection. These are natural way. Following vaccination, this is acquired. Passive immunity also, transfer of maternal antibody through placenta, transfer of maternal antibody through milk is the natural way. And following administration of immunoglobulin or antiserum is the acquired way. We will shortly know, in a short while, we will know what is immunoglobulin and what is antiserum. Now, vaccines. Immunizing agent can be of three types. It can be a vaccine, it can be antisera, it can be a immunoglobulin. Now, vaccines can be live attenuated vaccine where a live organism is weakened through many preparations and it is injected in the body to produce immunogenic response. And this can be a kill vaccine where the vaccine is killed and then injected into the body of the recipient. Antisera are preparation antibody produced in the animal body. Previously, antisera preparations were injected to induce in passive immunity in the recipient, but it has the disadvantage that it can cause serum sickness and anaphylaxis. Immunoglobulin, we all know what is immunoglobulin. Immunoglobulin is of five types, that is IgG, IgA, IgM, IgD, IgE. Now, what is vaccination? What is the definition of vaccination? Vaccination is a method of giving antigen to stimulate the immune response through active immunization. A vaccine is an immunobiological substance designed to produce specific protection against a given disease. A vaccine is antigenic but not pathogenic. That means when a vaccine is given, it produces an immunogenic response but it does not cause the disease. So that is the main difference between vaccination and natural infection. Whenever a natural infection occurs, it may cause disease, but in a vaccine, it contains the same antigenic moiety of that of the original pathogen, but it does not cause the disease. It produces an immunogenic response. Now, I have already said that what are the types of vaccine. It can be a live attenuated vaccine like in polio, BCG, MR, MMR. It can be a kill vaccine, maybe inactivated toxin, toxoid or killed organism or subunit. It can be a wholesale inactivated vaccine, wholesale inactivated pertussis, rabies, IPV, hepatitis A. It can be toxoid like diphtheria and tetanus. It can be a subunit vaccine. Now, what is toxoid? Now, toxoids are nothing. Certain bacteria produces exotoxin like diphtheria and tetanus. Now, this toxin are detoxicated and then they are injected in the body so that what will happen that these toxins, when injected in the body of the recipient, they induce a immunogenic response but does not produce the disease. Subunit vaccine contains only antigenic part. Protein vaccine, acellular pertussis, hepatitis B, some influenza. Pure polysaccharide vaccine, typhoid, pneumococcal polysaccharide vaccine, meningococcal polysaccharide vaccine. Conjugated polysaccharide vaccine, typhoid containing vaccine, and Haemophilus influenzae containing vaccine. Virus-like particle, human papilloma virus, DNA and RNA vaccine that was seen in COVID-19. So these were the types of vaccine we see. Now, immunoglobulin and antisera. Now, what is human normal immunoglobulin? What is human specific immunoglobulin? And what is non-human immunoglobulin? That is antisera. Human normal immunoglobulin. This is a highly rich immunoglobulin from at least pooled from 1,000 donors. Hepatitis A, measles, rabies, tetanus, mumps. These are example of human normal immunoglobulin. Human specific immunoglobulin, they are similar to human normal immunoglobulin, but they contains at least 5 times more potent antibody potential than the human normal immunoglobulin. Example are hepatitis B, varicella, diphtheria. Non-human immunoglobulin antisera, I already discussed what is antisera. These are antibody preparation prepared in the animal body. When they produce the antibody, this antibody is injected in the human to produce the passive immunity. But the disadvantage is that they can cause serum sickness and anaphylaxis. Examples are diphtheria, tetanus, gas gangrene, botulism, rabies. Immunization and the effect of HIV infection. The majority of children born to women who are infected with HIV do not acquire HIV infection. Of those children who do become infected, most acquire the virus from their mother at the time of delivery or shortly thereafter. Early in life, they are immunologically normal or immunosuppression will be minimal, if any, and when most of the primary series of vaccines are either started or completed. HIV infected children develop immune dysfunction affecting all aspects of the immune system with increasing age. So what we learn from here, that majority of the children born to women who are infected with HIV do not acquire HIV इन्फेक्शन. तो जिन माँ का HIV इन्फेक्शन है, ज़रूरी नहीं है कि उनके सब बच्चों को HIV इन्फेक्शन होगा. Of those children who do become infected, जिन माँ के बच्चे HIV infected होते हैं, most acquire the virus from the mother at the time of delivery or shortly thereafter. तो मतलब क्या है कि डिलीवरी के टाइम इन्फेक्शन होते हैं. Early in life, they are immunologically normal or immunosuppression will be minimal if any, and when most of the primary series of vaccine are either started or completed. So this is a very important point, that the children, even if they are HIV infected, born to a HIV positive mother, they are immunologically normal in early life, or immunosuppression will be minimal if any, and when most of the primary series of vaccines are either started or completed. So early in life, they are immunologically normal and the immunosuppression is minimal, so the primary series of vaccines can be given to them. HIV infected children develop immune dysfunction affecting all aspects of the immune system with increasing age. जैसे उम्र बढ़ता है, immune dysfunction होता है HIV infected children को, और all aspects of the immune system is affected. Immunization in children living with HIV. The following areas of concern are critical to the children living with HIV. Will the effectiveness of a vaccine be impaired because of underlying immune deficiency? Are children receiving a live viral vaccine or a bacterial vaccine subject to a significantly increased risk compared with a non-infected person? Does administering a vaccine significantly affect the rate of HIV-associated disease? So these are the emerging areas of concern: impaired seroconversion and clinical efficacy, need for increased amount and number of doses, safety issue associated with live vaccine. We know that children living with HIV/AIDS, they have immune suppression. So it may happen that there may be safety issue associated with live vaccines, decreased duration of protective efficacy. So the vaccine provides protective efficacy. So in HIV case, there is decreased duration of protective efficacy, and that is an area of concern. Effect of vaccine on the rate of HIV protection progression. So what is the effect of the vaccine on the rate of HIV protection? That is also an area of concern. So we need to answer this question. Now, what is the pathophysiology of HIV infected children? The mother is HIV infected and immunodeficient, does not have protective antibody against infection. Poor placental acquisition of antibody. Now, what happens if the mother is HIV infected and immunodeficient? She doesn't have protective antibody against infection. So there is poor transplacental transfer of antibody to the fetus. This gives rise to susceptibility to infection of the fetus or the child at an early age. And mother may also get infected with vaccine preventable disease like tuberculosis, pertussis, diphtheria, tetanus, exposing the child to them. So this is the pathophysiology of HIV infected children. First, the mother is immunodeficient, so there is deficient transfer of maternal antibody from the mother to the fetus. So decrease maternal antibody acquisition from the mother. Moreover, when the mother becomes infected with vaccine preventable disease, the child is also exposed to the risk of those vaccine preventable disease. Now, increased morbidity and mortality in HIV infected children from vaccine preventable disease. Hepatitis B in HIV infected children. Hepatitis B and HIV share common risk factor and mode of transmission. The mode of transmission of hepatitis B and HIV are common, like sexual transmission, sharing of needles and syringes, and transplacental transfer of virus from the mother to the fetus. That is vertical transmission. Co-infection increases the mortality by 8%. HIV infected children are also vulnerable to reactivation of occult hepatitis B infection, progression of hepatitis B infection to chronicity, and lower rate of loss of serum hepatitis B antigen. Now, lower rate of loss of serum hepatitis B antigen means that there is a higher chance of replication, there is higher infectivity, and there is a higher chance of progression to chronic liver disease. Risk of TB in children living with HIV. HIV positive children are at increased risk of developing tuberculosis, 50% chance of developing tuberculosis. Infection with HIV is a strong risk factor for progression from latent to active tuberculosis. So, HIV होता है तो लेटेंट टू एक्टिव ट्यूबरकुलोसिस में प्रोग्रेशन बहुत ज़्यादा होता है. It is more severe, more progressive, and likely to occur in extrapulmonary site. Rates of drug-resistant TB tend to be higher. Recurrent disease and relapse occurs more. Now, what is the difference between recurrence and relapse? Recurrence is the second episode of tuberculosis. Relapse means it is a type of recurrence where there is activation of the original mycobacterium strain. The mortality rate is high, especially when the CD4 count decreases. Measles and HIV. In developing nations, the mortality rate attributable to measles has been 50% for HIV-infected children. So, measles के लिए जो मौत होते हैं उनकी 50% HIV पॉजिटिव चिल्ड्रन में होते हैं. Total 1475 measles cases were studied and 189 15% HIV and measles co-infection was noted. Now, in children under 9 months of age, 33% children were HIV infected with measles and 25% were non-HIV infected. In children under 6 months, 9% of HIV were co-infected and 5% were non-HIV infected. Death was noted in 12.2% of the HIV infected and 4.3% of the HIV uninfected. So the natural conclusion is that HIV infected get measles infection at a younger age and are more likely to die of measles. Because we can see apparently from the slide that children under 6 months of age, they are 9% of HIV co-infected show measles, whereas 5% in non-HIV co-infected. Under 9%, under 9 months, 33% of the HIV infected children have measles, whereas 25% non-HIV infected have children. So HIV infected get measles infection at a younger age and are more likely to die of measles. Haemophilus influenzae infection. Frequent cause of pneumonia in children, annual incidence is 43.8 cases per 1 lakh. 15% to 27% bacterial pneumonia of known etiology are caused by Haemophilus influenzae in HIV infected patients. Mortality rates of 11.5% have been reported. Impaired Haemophilus influenzae type B, transplacental antibody transmission, and declining antibody avidity through the first year of life represent potential vulnerabilities for HIV exposed but uninfected infants. So, what happens in HIV infected children? There is decreased Haemophilus influenzae type B antibody transmission, and there is also decreased antibody avidity, means antibody attraction through the first year of life represents the vulnerability for children to Haemophilus influenzae type B infection. Varicella. HIV infected children have an atypical varicella rash with more lesion. Rashes may continue for many months, for few days in normal children, and may be hemorrhagic. So, in normal children, the rashes persist for few days. But in children with HIV, the rashes here continue for many months and may be hemorrhagic rash. Are at risk for developing visceral dissemination. Complications: pneumonia, hepatitis, encephalitis, DIC, disseminated intravascular coagulation, retinitis. 1115 times more likely to have varicella zoster. So HIV infected children have 115 times more tendency or more chance to have varicella zoster infection. Pertussis. According to the World Health Organization report in 2003, 17.6 million cases were noted. 279,000 deaths per year were noted. 90% of the cases affected young children living in developing country. More severe and prolonged course in HIV infected children was seen. Now coming to the vaccine effectiveness and seroconversion. Level of effectiveness in HIV uninfected children. Risk of developing the disease. It is not possible to evaluate the risk of disease in individual child. Efficacy of vaccine. No vaccine provide 100% protection, though most of the vaccine do offer high degree of protection. Almost absolutely protective, 99% protective are measles, mumps, rubella vaccines, and diphtheria and tetanus toxoid. Highly protective, 80 to 95% protection is offered by polio, BCG, hepatitis B, and pertussis vaccines. Moderately protective, 40 to 60% is provided by TAP, that is typhoid, paratyphoid AB, cholera vaccine, and influenza killed vaccine. Concerns regarding defective vaccine response in HIV infected host. Now, there is defective primary immune response. We know after vaccination, the antigen is represented to the cells by the antigen presenting cell. In HIV, what happens that there is destruction and functional alteration of the antigen presenting cell, and there is a direct effect of HIV on beta cell, B cells. High level of antigen, non-specific hypergomaglobulinemia is there. Failure of B cell to proliferate on stimulation. Defects in generation of immunological memory. Now, indirect effect of HIV impaired T cell help on B cells. So, what happens that the HIV infected T cell has an impaired effect on the B cell. Defective capacity of the B cell to differentiate in response to CD40 and B cell receptor trigger. There is clonal deletion, depletion of memory T and B cell. All this is the concern regarding defective vaccine response in HIV-1 infected host. I may repeat again, there is defective primary immune response in response to the antigen. There is high level of antigen non-specific hypergammaglobulinemia, failure of B cell to proliferate on stimulation, defects in generation of immunological memory, clonal deletion or depletion of memory T and B cells. Effectiveness and seroconversion rate. BCG vaccination. Now 70% response rate in children born to HIV negative mother, 37% HIV infected children, and 57% HIV exposed uninfected children. So, in HIV negative mother, in response to BCG vaccination, the response rate is 70%, whereas in HIV exposed uninfected children, it is 57%, whereas in HIV infected children, it is 37%. So we can clearly see that the response rate is lower in children who are HIV exposed and HIV infected. BCG vaccination induces immune changes in HIV exposed infants, including an increase in the proportion of activated CCR5 plus CD4 plus HIV target cell. Now, let me explain through this. The CD4 plus and the CCR5 cell are the target cells. Now, HIV protein binds with this CD4 cell first, receptor protein, and then with the CCR5 receptor protein. These are the receptor protein, the CD4 receptor protein and the CCR5 receptor protein. The HIV cell, each HIV virus, first binds with the CD4 receptor protein and then with the CCR5 receptor protein, and then it invade and infect the cell. These findings provide insight into optimal BCG vaccine timing to minimize the risk of HIV transmission to exposed infants while preserving potential benefits conferred by BCG vaccination. So what we have to do, that we have to balance the risk of BCG vaccination against the benefit of BCG vaccination with the susceptibility to HIV transmission. We will discuss this elaborately in later. Measles vaccine. 25 to 30% of the HIV infected children have responded to a single dose of standard titer measles vaccine in most prospective study. So, HIV infected children, 25 to 30% have responded to a single dose of standard titer measles vaccine in most prospective study. But we also recommend to give an additional dose of measles vaccines in HIV infected children, which we will discuss later. Measles and HIV. 15,363 children were studied. Vaccine-associated adverse event and deaths were uncommon. In HIV-infected children had lower seroresponse rate after primary vaccination compared with HIV unexposed, which was mitigated by antiretroviral therapy and time interval between vaccination and serology. So, the HIV exposed children, infected children, had lower seroconversion rate, which was mitigated by antiretroviral therapy, which could be mitigated by antiretroviral therapy, and the time interval between vaccination and serology should be ideally be 8 to 12 weeks. So, if 8 to 12 weeks after we give the do the serology, we can get an adequate seroresponse rate from HIV infected children. Effectiveness and seroconversion rate of hepatitis B. Ongoing HIV viremia limits successful vaccination. After 3-dose 0.16-month schedule, 90 to 95% healthy individuals are protected, whereas only 20 to 70% HIV positive patients are protected. Conclusion: 3-dose schedule for hepatitis B is not as effective in HIV positive compared to HIV negative person. इसकी मतलब है कि हेपेटाइटिस बी की जो हम 3 डोज देते हैं 016 वो HIV नेगेटिव पर्सन में जैसा इफेक्टिव होता है HIV पॉजिटिव में उतना इफेक्टिव नहीं होता है. Effectiveness and seroconversion rate of hepatitis B. Persons with undetectable viral loads have higher chances of having protective antibody titers after hepatitis B vaccination. So, lower the viral load, higher is the protective antibody titer after HPV infection vaccination. 3 double dose schedule in HIV positive patient. We recommend 3 double dose schedule. What is double dose schedule? That is, the recommended dose is 20 microgram. 3 dose 016, sometimes 4 dose also is recommended in HIV symptomatic individual. And we can see 100% response rate in patient with CD4 count more than 200 cell per cubic millimeter, whereas 47% response is seen in patients with CD4 count less than 200 cells per cubic millimeter. Pertussis vaccines. Agglutinin level lower in HIV infected than in HIV exposed, but uninfected children 30% versus 55.1%. P-value is 0.005. So, the agglutinin level is lower in HIV infected than in HIV exposed but uninfected children. So, in HIV, the agglutinin level in HIV exposed but uninfected children is 55.1%, whereas in HIV infected children, the agglutinin level is only 30%, and that is significant. The difference between these two are significant. Low antibody level with severe immunodeficiency when the CD4 T cell level is less than 25%. So, with severe immunodeficiency, the antibody level is lower. A study from South Africa in HIV unexposed and HIV exposed infant indicated that 3 to 4 doses of an acellular pertussis containing vaccines are required. Lower antibody titer to pertussis pre-vaccination has been detected in HIV exposed compared with HIV unexposed infant. Vaccine safety and risk of disease with live vaccine. Safety of vaccines in CLHIV. Immunization is generally safe and beneficial for children living with HIV, although HIV-induced immune suppression reduces the benefit compared with that obtained in HIV uninfected children. Immunization is safe and beneficial for children living with HIV, although HIV-induced immune suppression reduces the benefit compared with that of HIV uninfected children. मतलब क्या है कि HIV चिल्ड्रन जो पॉजिटिव चिल्ड्रन होते हैं उनमें भी इम्यूनाइजेशन सेफ होते हैं, बेनिफिशियल होते हैं, पर उसका जो बेनिफिट होता है वो अनइन्फेक्टेड चिल्ड्रन से कम होता है. Unless the child has rapidly progressing HIV related disease, usually routine vaccination should be offered according to the age. So, this is a very key note that unless the child has a rapidly progressing HIV related disease, the routine vaccination जैसे वैसे बच्चों की उम्र की माफिक उन्हें वैक्सीनेशन देना चाहिए. Non-replicating vaccines are not associated with increased risk of complication. What is non-replicating vaccines? Vaccines which can induce a host immune response but do not replicate within the host. Vaccine which can induce a host immune response but does not replicate within the host. That is called a non-replicating vaccine. They are not associated with increased risk of complication. BCG, measles, oral polio, and yellow fever vaccine have been reported to be associated with complication in severely depressed immunity. So, जो बच्चे होते हैं जिनकी severely depressed immunity होते हैं, उनमें BCG, measles, oral polio, and yellow fever has been reported to be associated with complications. BCG vaccines. Coming to BCG vaccines, immune suppression in HIV-exposed baby usually takes several months to develop. The immune suppression, which is seen in HIV-exposed baby, usually takes several months to develop. Administration of BCG to HIV-infected children in the first few months is associated with lower rate of complication. So, अगर बच्चों को पहले कुछ महीने में ही BCG दिया जाता है, तो उसका complications कम होता है. Progressive immune suppression can also lead to the reactivation of latent BCG organism. Now, as the age increases, there is progressive immune suppression, and that can lead to reactivation of the latent BCG organism also. What are the complications of BCG vaccination? Regional, extra-regional, localized disseminated BCG disease, regional lymphadenitis, poorly healing ulcers, and fistula. Vaccine safety in HIV-infected children. Live vaccines not to be used if CD4 count is less than 15% or less than 200 cells per cubic millimeter. Mumps, measles, rubella, varicella, yellow fever. So, these three vaccines, mumps, measles, rubella, varicella, yellow fever vaccines, should not be used if the CD4 count is less than 15%. लाइव वैक्सीन नॉट टू बी यूज्ड इफ सेफर इनएक्टिवेटेड ऑल्टरनेटिव एग्जिस्ट. अगर सेफर इनएक्टिवेटेड ऑल्टरनेटिव एग्जिस्ट करती है तो ये वैक्सीन यूज नहीं किया चाहिए. वो है लाइव इंट्रानेशनल इन्फ्लुएंजा, ओरल पोलियोमाइलाइटिस. BCG should not be used in low immunogenicity country, although risk of adenitis is substantially reduced by early initiation of ART. So, BCG लो एंडेमिक कंट्री में यूज नहीं किया जा चाहिए, although risk of adenitis substantially reduced by early initiation of ART. Immunization in children, current guidelines. Now, according to the National Immunization Schedule, at birth, Bacilli calmette guerin, that is BCG, oral polio vaccine 0 dose, hepatitis B birth dose should be given. At 6 weeks, OPV1, that is oral polio vaccine 1, pentavalent 1, rotavirus vaccine 1, fractional dose of inactivated polio vaccine FIPV1, pneumococcal conjugate vaccine 1 should be given. At 10 weeks, OPV2, pentavalent 2, RVV2 should be given. At 14 weeks, OPV3, pentavalent 3, FIPV2, RVV3, PCV2 should be given. At 9 to 12 months, measles and rubella first dose, Japanese encephalitis first dose, PCV booster should be given. Now, Japanese encephalitis vaccine should be given only in endemic district. Like there are certain endemic districts in West Bengal like Jalpaiguri, Shiliguri, Bakura, Bardhaman, Birbhum. These are the endemic districts in West Bengal. So, Japanese encephalitis vaccine should be given in endemic districts only. In 16 to 24 months, we give MR second dose, JE second dose, diphtheria pertussis tetanus, that is DPT booster 1, OPV booster. In 5 to 6 years, we give DPT booster 2, second dose. In 10 years, we give tetanus and adult diphtheria, that is TD. In 16 years, we give a booster dose of TD, and in pregnant mother, they receive 2 doses of tetanus toxoid, that is tetanus and adult diphtheria, TD vaccine it is nowadays called, TD1 and TD2 at 4 weeks gap. And if the mother has received a full course within 3 years, only a booster dose is suffice. I will skip through this picture. This is just the enumeration of the previous slide. Now coming to the human papilloma virus. The country records 1 new cases of cervical cancer every 4 months and 1 death every 7 minutes. In India, 2 human papilloma virus vaccines were licensed in 2008, a quadrivalent vaccine known as Gardasil and a bivalent vaccine known as Cervarix. Both vaccines provide approximately 90% protection from cervical cancer, with the antibodies remaining stable for at least 10 years. In September 2022, India launched a homemade product marketed as Sarvavac. Now, this is the human papillomavirus vaccine, prevents 6 types of cancer in girls and boys. Scheduled for any brand 9 to 14 years, 2 doses. At 0 and 6 months, above 14 years or immunocompromised, 3 doses is required at 0, 2 and 6 months. Sarvavac, it protects against human papillomavirus strains 6, 11, 16 and 18, given to girls and boys aged 9 to 26 years. Gardasil, it protects the girls given in the age of 9 to 14 years. There is a nonavalent vaccine, that is Gardasil 9, 6, 11, 16, 18, 31, 33, 45, 52, 58 strain. It protects against. It is given to both the girls and boys. It protects the girls from 9 to it should be given at the age of 9 to 26 years, and in boys in 9 to 14 years. For the vaccine of HPV should be initiated at 9 to 14 years of age for best results. Universal precaution need to be followed while giving injectable vaccine. Now, what is adverse event following immunization? An AFI is any untoward medical occurrence which follows immunization and which does not necessarily have a causal relationship with the use of vaccine. There are 5 types of AFI, vaccine product related reaction. This is due to inherent property, this is a AFI which is caused or precipitated by inherent property of the vaccine itself. Vaccine quality defect related reaction. This is a AFI which is caused or precipitated by a quality defect of the vaccine or the administrative device provided by the manufacturer. Immunization error related, it is an AFI caused or precipitated due to the error in handling, prescription or administration of the vaccine, so thus it is preventable. Immunization anxiety related, that is an AFI associated with the anxiety due to immunization. And coincidental event, this is a event temporally associated with the immunization, that is it occurs following immunization, but it is neither vaccine product related, neither vaccine quality defect related, neither immunization error related, neither immunization anxiety related. Desirable vaccines not currently available through the national schedule. So there are certain vaccines which are not currently available through the national schedule, but these are desirable. These are inactivated hepatitis A vaccine, inactivated influenza vaccine, varicella vaccine, a single dose of Haemophilus influenzae type B, meningococcal conjugate vaccine. Inactivated hepatitis A vaccine, 2 doses should be given 6 months apart between 12 to 23 months. Inactivated influenza vaccine, starting at 6 months of age, 2 doses 1 month apart, 9 years and above, single dose annual booster with single dose. Varicella vaccine, administered the first dose at age 15 to 18 months and the second dose at the age 4 to 6 years. Since this is a live attenuated vaccine, it is only given to asymptomatic children who are not severely immunocompromised. A single dose of Haemophilus influenzae type B is indicated in unimmunized children more than 5 years of age, those who have not completed the primary series, and the 15-month booster with Haemophilus influenzae type B earlier. So, in children who were previously unimmunized with Haemophilus influenzae and is more than 5 years of age, a single dose Haemophilus influenzae vaccine can be given. Meningococcal conjugate vaccine should be administered 2 doses at least 8 weeks apart between 9 to 23 months of age and a booster 2 to 5 years after the primary series. The 3-dose series of human papillomavirus vaccine, tetanus toxoid, reduced diphtheria toxoid and acellular pertussis vaccine, that is called the Tdap vaccine. The Tdap vaccine means tetanus toxoid, reduced diphtheria toxoid and acellular pertussis vaccine, and meningococcal conjugate vaccine, all are indicated in HIV infected adolescent, that is children below between 10 to 19 years of age. Coming to the key points, HIV exposed infant, like all other infants, should be given BCG at birth. If BCG has not been given at birth or for neonates with HIV infection confirmed by early virological testing, BCG vaccination should be delayed until ART has been started and the infant confirmed to be immunological stable. For children who are receiving ART and have not received BCG earlier, it may be given once they are clinically and well and immunological stable. If the children is low than 5 years of age, CD4 count should be more than 25%, and if she is more than 5 years of age, the CD4 count should be more than equal to 200 cells per cubic millimeter. I repeat, all HIV exposed infants should receive BCG at birth. If BCG is not given at birth, neonates with HIV infection confirmed by early virological testing, BCG vaccination should be delayed until ART has been started and the infant confirmed to be immunologically stable. Immunologically stable means if the child is less than 5 years of age, CD4 count should be more than 25%. If the child is more than 5 years of age, the CD4 count should be more than equal to 200 cells per cubic millimeter. Severely immunocompromised HIV-infected infants, children, adolescents, and young adults, as defined, should not receive measles virus-containing vaccine because vaccine-related pneumonia have been reported. WHO recommends that an additional dose of measles-containing vaccine be administered to HIV-infected children receiving ART following immune reconstitution. That is CD4 count 20 to 24%. What is immune reconstitution? It is a process where the body regains its immunity power following an infection like HIV or through some drugs. So WHO recommends that an additional dose of a measles should be given to children who are HIV infected and who are receiving ART with a CD4 count of 20 to 25%. A supplemental dose of measles containing vaccine may be considered in HIV exposed infant or soon after diagnosis of HIV infection in children older than 6 months who are not receiving ART. Rotavirus vaccine, though a live vaccine, is recommended for use in HIV exposed infant due to their vulnerability to diarrhea. We know that the commonest cause of diarrhea is rotavirus infection. So, though it is a live vaccine, due to the danger of diarrhea and the mortality and morbidity caused by diarrhea, it is recommended for use in HIV exposed infant. The vaccine virus is highly attenuated virus and immunization with the rotavirus vaccine given in early infancy when diagnosis of HIV infection is not confirmed in most infants. Moreover, even those who are infected but not diagnosed yet are unlikely to have severe immunodeficiency. Nevertheless, like all live vaccine, it should not be given in children with known severe immunodeficiency. So, BCG should be given at birth. If not given at birth, or for neonates who have a confirmed HIV infection through early virological testing, BCG vaccination should be delayed until ART is started or the infant is confirmed to be immunologically stable. Measles vaccine, one additional dose should be given to all HIV infected children receiving ART following immune reconstitution. Rotavirus vaccine should be given due to the damaging effect of the diarrhea, and though it is a live vaccine, in early childhood, the immune suppression is not much, and moreover, it should not be given to children with known severe immunodeficiency.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Oh, sorry. Please continue.
Key points continue. Pneumococcal conjugate vaccine. PCV13 is given at 2, 4, and 6 months with a booster at 12 to 15 months. It is recommended that pneumococcal polysaccharide vaccine, that is PPSV23, should be administered at least 8 weeks after the last dose of PCV to children with HIV infection aged 2 years or older. So, we will give pneumococcal conjugate vaccine at 2, 4, 6 months with a booster at 12 to 15 months, and following this, in children with HIV infection aged 2 years or older, after 8 weeks, we will give a pneumococcal polysaccharide vaccine. Inactive Japanese encephalitis vaccine is safe for use in children with HIV infection. A live attenuated JE vaccine is also now made available. This is to be avoided in children with HIV. So, live JE vaccine should not be made available. It is desirable to check for seroconversion and give booster as required, especially for hepatitis B. A 4-dose double quantity schedule for hepatitis B has been recommended in view of poor seroconversion with routine immunization. As we discussed earlier, that we have seen that in hepatitis B there is a poor seroconversion with routine immunization. That is why a double dose, that is a 20 microgram dose, a 4-dose schedule, or a 3-dose schedule. 4 dose in HIV symptomatic, that is 0, 1, 2, 6, and in HIV asymptomatic 0, 1, 6, 3-dose schedule is given, recommended. So, in conclusion, we can say that HIV infected infants and children can safely receive most childhood vaccine as per the National Immunization Program, although efficacy may vary. So, this is a very important point, that all children infected with HIV should receive almost of the childhood vaccine as per the National Immunization Schedule, though their efficacy may vary. Oral polio and intranasal influenza are contraindicated in HIV infected patient. BCG should be given at birth, as it has been said, but if not given at birth, it may be delayed in symptomatic children with HIV until antiretroviral therapy has started or they are confirmed to be immunologically stable. If less than 5 years of age, CD4 count more than 15%, and if more than 5 years of age, CD4 count more than equal to 200 cells per cubic millimeter. Live vaccines avoided in severely immunocompromised and symptomatic infants or children. Rotavirus vaccine should be given in HIV exposed infants due to their risk for diarrhea. Inactivated Japanese encephalitis vaccine is safe for use in children living with HIV. Use only where it is indicated. Give additional boosters as required, especially for hepatitis B and hepatitis A. Vitamin A supplementation as per the National Immunization Schedule should be given. Desirable vaccine but not currently available in the national schedule are inactivated hepatitis A, inactivated influenza vaccine, varicella vaccine, pneumococcal conjugate vaccine. Immunization status should be reviewed. I thank the National Immunization Schedule, the Global Alliance for Vaccine Immunization, Immunization Action Coalition, World Health Organization, Center for Disease Control and Prevention, and IB Immunization 2023 as a resource for preparation of these slides. So there is a treatment guideline for HIV app, the National Guideline for HIV Care and Treatment 2021. were published by the National AIDS Control Organization under the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Government of India. The mobile app is now available with more features in version 1.0.10.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yeah, ma'am, there's one question in the chat box. Tripathi sir, would you like to unmute and ask your question? Kiran
Question.
sir, can we give mic access to everyone? Tripathi sir, would you like to unmute?
Yes, madam. Good afternoon, madam. Very nice presentation. In fact, I was looking forward to this type of presentation on vaccines because we are not very much well acquainted previously. This will help us a lot in future. My question was because we are this CLHIV is below 2 years of age are regarded as advanced immunosuppression, right?
Yes.
In these cases, should we avoid these live vaccines as I have mentioned in my chat box? Totally we should avoid or there is any adjustment we can do?
In advanced immunosuppression, live vaccine should be avoided. OPV, BCG, measles, yellow fever, JE should be given only if there is indication like in endemic districts, etc.
Right.
And yellow fever is also like that. But OPV is contraindicated. BCG should also not be given until the child is immunologically stable, as I have mentioned. And measles should not be given in advanced immunological disease because there is chances of measles cause pneumonia.
Okay, my question is a child below 2 years of age, if we ignore his CD4 level simply because of age, should we avoid by assuming that the child is in advanced immunosuppression, we should avoid the live vaccines mentioned here?
Sorry, I couldn't understand your question. Please repeat.
My question is solely based on age of the child. If it is below 2 years of age, and as it is regarded as in advanced immunosuppression, should we altogether avoid these live vaccines?
No, should see the CD4 count. We should see whether the child is immunologically stable or not.
Okay, 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 okay. There is a space for giving vaccine if the immunosuppression is there, as per the parameters you have mentioned.
Yes.
Okay, okay, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any more questions? Ma'am, I don't think there are any questions. Thank you so much for taking out time to facilitate this session.
It was on my pleasure. I
Thank
hope
you.
this will help the participants.
Certainly, ma'am. Thank you so much. Thank you to all the participants. We'll quickly run the feedback form. The feedback poll is now visible on your screen. Participants are requested to please attempt the feedback poll. There are 5 questions in all. Click on the answer of your choice and read the last question carefully. Before you leave the meeting, please take the feedback poll. We'll wait for another minute, requesting everyone to please take the feedback poll. Thank you, everyone. We'll conclude this session now. Kiran sir, we can stop the recording and end the e-poll.